Sanket Chauhan, surgical automations. Is that the first one, Richie?
Yes, Uni.
Okay. Sanket, are you ready?
I'm ready. Hello, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I'm sharing my screen. I don't know if you can see it yet, but yes, I think
we can see it, and you have 10 minutes.
Perfect. Well, it's thanks for the invitation. It's always fun to be here, and we're glad to be back, and thankful for Innovator and Data for having us back. So what we are gonna show us to you today is something about our company and what we are doing and what our plans are. And specifically, there are a lot of intraluminal procedures that involves a scope, a flexible scope, such as bronchoscopy or upper or lower GI endoscopy, cystoscopy, ureteroscopy, hysteroscopy. These procedures are done by people in different specialties. It may be critical care, trauma, urologists, colorectal, upper, lower GI endoscopists, et cetera, et cetera. There is a lot of skill needed to develop, to do these procedures. There are some opportunities, and there are some problems, and there are some opportunities. These are not easy skills to acquire. It takes a long time to understand camera navigation, the management of the endoscope, the anatomy identification, which might be different in all of these cases. And there might be complications that may lead to injury, and not identifying the anatomy might lead to more injuries and bleeding. And there are all of these may have a long-term sequelae. But there are opportunities, as a lot of these skills, as you see in the lower section, they are very similar. This basically are moving a wheel with your hands. These are very similar devices, but there is variable anatomy, but it's usually there is enough essence of predictability in this that computer can kind of understand it if trained right. So what are we developing? We are developing a robotic platform that works under the supervision of surgeons or endoscopists that can partially or completely automate the steps of a procedure. And this might be the most critical and the most technically difficult steps of the procedures. And these robots can be for intubation. That's an early example that we're going to show you. But then the same technology we are planning to apply for endoscopies, upper and lower, ureteroscopies, cystoscopies, bronchoscopies, and so on. Our identity is patient safety. We intend to apply these technologies that are existing to improve the patient safety and outcomes. So the current device, we talked about a lot of these procedures. You have to start somewhere, and we decided to start with an automatic intubation robot. We called it the Vishnu device. It is named after the Hindu lord of the protection of universe. And endotracheal intubation, it is one classic procedure that is performed by people of varied skills. It might be a 22-year-old in the back of an ambulance where the patient is literally dying. And it might be an anesthesiologist with 30 years of experience who is doing an elective care in an operating room where there's no such stress because nobody is dying. And as this group probably well knows, what it implies is you kind of find the tracheal opening and put the tube in. And if not done right, it can lead to brain damage or death. For example, this patient, Elaine Bromley, a lot of people probably, especially in England, know about this case. She was a young female, 33 years old, young kids, Victoria and Adam. Husband was an airline pilot, pretty healthy, went for a routine sinus surgery in the operating room. And the only past history she had was congenital fused vertebra, cervical vertebra. And they tried to induce her, and the OSAT just went down and down. It went to like 40%, and they could not put tube in her, and she could not ventilate. So they had to abandon the procedure after 20 minutes, and she was sent to recovery. We found out eventually that she had suffered stroke. hypoxic stroke, and she was in a complete vegetative state. And they tried everything, and 13 days later, she was taken off life support. So this happens to the best of anesthesiologists, even in the best of the cases. Even in field, the first attempt failure rate for intubation is as high as 41%. Now let that sink in. You know, the medic who comes on the field, the chances that they're gonna get this procedure right in the first attempt is barely more than a flip of a coin. And again, these are sick patients, 30 to 50% have mortality. And if not done right, may lead to injuries that can increase the length of stay to 1.1 to 5 days. That translates to about $2,000 to about $12,000 a day at cost of burden to the hospitals. So this is our device. This is a short animation that we have. It's a 3-part device. There's a blade that goes on top of this Vishnu robot, and the tube goes inside this. The distal length of this is flexible, and you can angulate that, and you put this assembly inside the mouth. Once you put it inside the mouth, that's where the AI and machine learning starts to take place. It will tell you what the trajectory is going to be. And this trajectory is pretty much like how when you reverse your car, you see these dotted lines and where to go and what not to do. This tells you about the trajectory of the tube. If you're not happy with this trajectory, the physician always, or whoever is inserting, always have an option to manually override that by a drag and drop kind of method. And once happy, that's when you press the button and the tube starts going in inside the trachea. So no pushing, no shoveling, no breaking of incisors, just a simple and smooth process. And as you all know, there's something called going too far inside the trachea. And when that happens, it's like automatic stopping of the car. It will give you a warning. And if you still don't stop, it will stop for you. Our consumers are, combination of people with different background. These can be paramedics, nurses, physicians. In pre-hospital cases, a lot of these are non-physicians. And it can be big hospitals, ambulance companies, first responders. The consumers have a bit breadth. And there are a lot of, we are not reinventing a procedure. This has existed for 100 years. And there are some companies in the market, obviously old school laryngoscopies done by a lot of these companies. They have their own tubes and all. We have a newer technology called video laryngoscopy, which does have camera-based intubation, but again, there are still more skills needed in that. There is still hand-eye coordination because the tube insertion is still manual. And there is still skill development. We are the only one in market that have a predictive display that detects the tracheal opening and that has automated insertion of the tube. We use robot as a service as a business model. One of the biggest barriers of entry in market for robotics is the cost. And what we are saying is that we'll take the cost, just try it out. We'll bill you per number of procedures you perform. If you don't perform procedures, you don't have to spend lots of money on this. So because we are confident that as people get hands on it, they'll be more and more interested in getting this. Now, this market opportunity just for the endotracheal intubation, again, this does not include robotic bronchoscopy, cystoscopy, retroscopy, endoscopy, etc. Just for intubation is a bit more than $3 million. Overall, it's well over $30 billion. And the value proposition is higher cost, higher quality with lower cost. We can make sure that the patients are intubated in less attempt and the skills needed for maintaining that accuracy is not as high. Again, this is meet the team physician. I'm myself, I'm trained in clinical simulation. My background is in urology. Ritam Bhara, she is a Berkeley trained intellectual property attorney. Jason is a Harvard trained intellectual property patent litigation attorney. Together, we have about more than 50 years of experience in our domains. Amit is our corporate strategist. He's the founder and CEO of Chromaxo and Euro 42, and he's a serial entrepreneur and had 3 successful exits. Our clinical advisors are who's who of the world, and we are adding more as we go. Dr. Smith, she's the president-elect for American College of ER Physicians. Dr. Aziz is the chair of Scientific Advisory Board for Society of Head and Neck Anesthesia. Dr. Rosenblatt at Yale, he's the founder of ARMY On Demand course. He goes all over the world teaching there. And Dr. Umesh, he's at Mayo Clinic now, and he's a critical care physician too. These are some of the affiliations of our partners, our affiliations of our advisors and our founding team. And this is kind of a initial model of what our device looked like. Again, we have a prototype available now. Please contact us for a demo. Our information is here. At this point, we're only giving private confidential tools, not something that we'll be willing to share on a public platform at this point, but eventually maybe. So the final device that we'll plan to have is be less than 1.5 pounds, battery life up to 24 hours, completely wireless, completely portable, at height less than 12 inches.
Thank you, Sanket. Your time is up.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, time for questions. Any questions here in the audience? Come to the mic. We have Dr. Gary coming up here with questions for you.
Absolutely.
Anybody can ask questions in the Zoom chat. Go ahead, Gary.
Hi, Gary Goldman. I'll just, say I'm an anesthesiologist and a venture capitalist. So, but I'm going to stay away from the clinical part. So I'm a little confused as to who's your end client here. So are you looking at marketing this to organizations that are first responders as opposed to anesthesiologists in the operating room and HCOs?
Right. So our go-to-market strategy is actually with anesthesiologists. And the reason for that is that, there is no one dying over there. And, it's a lot more elective setting than an emergency setting. And a couple of our clinical advisors are from anesthesiology. So the go-to-market strategy starts with anesthesiology, and then you go horizontally and vertically expand it.
So pretty competitive market. As an anesthesiologist, there's a number of devices on the market that we've been using for a long time. I don't think I can count on my hands in 35 years the number of times a group of 50 anesthesiologists has not been able to innovate somebody with the tools that we have. So how do you, in terms of money that you're raising, so you're going to attempt to market this against, alongside what already exists in the market?
Right. See, there's always competition, and that is why, as a CEO of the company, it's my job to look at what are the barriers of adoption and what we can do to kind of overcome that. Yeah. Even with the most available, everything available, the highest, I would say 91% is what literature says is the first attempt intubation rates for trained anesthesiologists using video laryngoscopy. Again, the number one reason why anesthesiologists get sued during intubation is because of the breaking of incisor teeth. And that it still happens. It's there in literature.
Yeah. I'm only smiling a little because I'm also a dentist. So I was a guy.
Can the judges ask a question, please? We need to score several criteria. Would that be okay?
Go ahead, Judge.
Yes. In terms of where are you in your development? And also, I would like clarification around Dr. Goldman's question. I saw that 81% of your end users will be the medics, and yet I'm hearing anesthesiologists. So those are very different markets with very different price sensitivities. Can you clarify that, please?
Right. So where we are just closing our oversubscribed round. The seed round was $1 million round. We're already about 25%.
No, by traction, I mean your R&D.
Right. So we have a prototype available that we'll be happy to demo. We have several utility patents. We are going to develop alpha in, I don't know if you can still see my screen, but we have, these are our next 18 months milestones. that we have kind of designed. So yeah, we have a full functioning prototype that we are happy to demo, which we are pretty much now doing the industrial design work and those kind of things. So I think by this time next year, we should have a fully manufacturable device in hand.
Right.
And
Any
who
other?
again is your
Right.
consumer? Are you selling to medics, ambulances, or are you selling to anesthesiologists? I'm unclear.
So all those are consumers. The question is, who do you go first? And what is the least risky market where we are most comfortable going first? And I think that is going to be anesthesiologists, which means that these are going to be hospitals. And once we go there, and the reason is that, you have more trained people and they are less emergent cases because nobody is dying over there. So, we want to get started over there. And then as we improve our technologies and as we have more data, we kind of go in more pre-hospital. And the 81% is not, it's in pre-hospital market that we showed that 81% are pre-hospital, are non-physicians. That does not include ER physicians, that does not include critical care, ICU, that does not include operating rooms where it's mostly done by physicians, maybe some CRNA, some nurse practitioners.
Any other judge questions? Sanket, you can stop sharing the screen.
Thank you so much. It was fun being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes?
I have a question along similar lines. I'm curious what you have done when it comes to validation that these people will really use this kind of device. Do you have any pilots in the pipeline or any partnerships with the hands-on use of the device?
Right. So we are actually in the process of collecting a whole willingness to use, willingness to buy, willingness to purchase, and all those kind of things. And we are doing it in places all over the country, including Mayo Clinic, Oregon, Yale, and several other places. So we are collecting all that kind of data. And that is something we actually wanted to do in post Series A, but we already have runway right now, so we're going to do it right now. Thank you. Great question.
Yeah, so does it mean that you need this funding to even run the pilot?
The pilots would come once the pilots, like for clinical pilots, do you mean? Or do you mean marketing studies pilots?
I mean clinical.
Yeah, clinical pilots, that's not going to happen in a year or so. We need to finalize the device. It has to go through a couple more rounds of R&D and industrial design, and that is when it would be ready. So, we are still, that is all, right now we have a prototype to show this is what we can do, and we need more funds to kind of develop it more.
And how about looking in those pilots? Because you can agree with somebody, with some clinic that they want to run this pilot. So do you have a timeline on when you think someone might agree to run?
Yeah, I mean, we already have these commitments from our advisors. So we already have letter of supports, if you mean, from our advisor that they'll be happy to do that in these institutions.
All right.